One of the most hated design Atlus ever created has got to be that white lion look they gave Cerberus. Because it looked nothing like what he's supposed to look like, or at least that's what everyone says. But according to Theo's summary of Seneca description, Cerberus has a fierce serpent for a tail, viper bristling in his mane, thick fur across his body, and paw that end in the sharp claw of a lion. So does the white lion design actually have root in the old description, or is it just the claw? And is Atlus pulling some random high IQ move that nobody noticed? Well, as usual, the answer to that question is much more complex than anyone realized. You likely already know Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog of the underworld, the monster Hercules have to capture for the last of his 12 labor. So when he turned up in the Shin Megami Tensei series as a one-headed lion, of course the first instinct gonna be that somebody probably make a mistake or something. Now, Cerberus first entered the Megaten series back in the digital debut story novel, before the video games even exist. And right off the bat, instead of the three-headed canines everybody knows, he showed up as a single-headed wolf-like creature with a lizard tail. And yes, I checked this, apparently it's supposed to be a wolf head. At least that's what the original creator said. From there, he would pick up a few different looks over the years, but that core design, that one-headed wolf-like creature with a lizard tail, that continued to be the central themes. And eventually, we arrived at the Shin Megami Tensei version, where the overgrown coat on his head started to look more like a lion mane, and this is the version that got developed into the white lion everyone is familiar with today. That said, it's not like Atlus doesn't know the three-headed howl look. Across the several in-game compendium, Atlus straight up notes that Cerberus was originally a three-headed dog. On top of that, they have tried the classic appearance before. In Soul Hackers, they added 2 more heads onto that white lion design, which I think looks super awesome. And of course, there's that Cerberus in Persona 3, the one that belonged to everyone's favorite dog, Koromaru. Okay, so super quick recap, inside Atlus, the lion design is the one that Atlus featured the most. It runs straight through the mainline Shin Megami Tensei games and turned up in multiple Persona games. And this look certainly wasn't a mistake. They definitely choose to stick with the one-headed white lion design on purpose. So the design is deliberate, but why did Atlus prefer the lion look over the version everyone recognized? For a long time, that answer was basically a mystery, but recently we finally got an answer. Let me tell you about all that, starting from the beginning. The first clue comes from the book called the Shin Megami Tensei Demon's Bible, released in 2003. There, Kazuma Kaneko, the designer behind many of Atlus' classic demons, explained that Cerberus is basically a three-headed creature, but that he drew this one with a single head because the demon bonds with the protagonist. Now, this might be a little bit confusing for people who didn't play the game, but that lie is almost certainly pointed to the character named Pascal. In Shin Megami Tensei, Pascal is the protagonist's pet dog. He stays at the house until the protagonist's mother is killed by the Amanojaku, who's the protagonist then hunt down. After that, Pascal can join your party, and if you fuse him with another demons at the Cathedral of Shadows, he becomes an unusual powerful Cerberus. Pretty interesting, but what does bonding with the protagonist have to do with losing 2 heads? Well, it turns out there was more to this answer than anyone realized. In 2023, Aya Nishitani, the author of the original digital debut story novel, answered this very question on X, and judging by the view count, almost nobody saw it. He said that when he wrote the novel back in the 80s, he wanted to do something new with Cerberus, so instead of using that classic Greek mythology version, he decided to create his own take on the creature. Nishitani then go on to say that after Hiroyuki Kitasume, who was in charge of the illustration at that time, read the manuscript, he suggested that Cerberus would look better with a single head. And after thinking about it, Nishitani basically went, yeah, not bad. Because if you think about it, in mythology, he said, a creature with many heads read as creatures with many views. But this Cerberus is the protagonist's loyal demons. He has exactly one will, so he get exactly one head. And that's how the very first one-headed Cerberus came to be. And this is the version Kazuma Kaneko then later adapt into the famous Shin Megami Tensei design that Atlus still use to this day. But if you think that's the end of the story behind this beast, you are completely wrong. Everything we learned so far is about explaining the numbers of head, but it still doesn't really explain the lion traits. Cerberus was supposed to be a dog, remember? So why does Atlus insist on giving him so many lion traits? Well, the deeper I dig, the stranger it gets, and it's turned out Atlus might be onto something after all. In Greek mythology, Cerberus is the offspring of Typhon and Echidna, the two monsters who between them produce many famous monsters. A detail Atlus itself bring up all the time in Cerberus compendium entries. From there, if we take a look at some of Cerberus' narrative that Atlus also puts in its game, a common theme can be spotted. There's Chimera, a fire-breathing beast featuring a lion head. There's Sphinx, a creature with the body of a lion. And then there's Arthurus, a two-headed dog who also not known for having any lion-like traits. However, in Atlus version, Arthurus gets almost the same treatments as Cerberus. They take a creature that is supposed to be dog-like and give it a lion mane. So it really would not be too crazy to think Atlus is giving these creatures overlapping traits on purpose, almost like a visual hint that they belong in the same family. And it doesn't stop with just Atlus' own design. If you go back to some of the older description of Cerberus, there are some interesting details to uncover. For example, according to Theoi's summary of Seneca description that I mentioned earlier, Cerberus has a fierce serpent for a tail, viper bristling in his mane, thick fur across his body, and paws that end in the sharp claw of a lion. A similar idea also appears in a book called Saturnalia, where Macrobius describes Cerberus as a symbol of time. His Cerberus has 3 different animal heads wrapped in a giant serpent. A lion head for a powerful present, a wolf head for the past that devour our memories, and a dog head for the future that flatter us with hope. So when you put all this together, Atlus really did not make a design mistake. They deliberately chose the lion design and kept using it on purpose. And of course, part of that was to preserve the history of the Digital Devil story novel, but overall, the single head came down to loyalty, one will, one master. And the lion part was not so random either.